Colin, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. First things first, it's early in the morning in the UK. How are you feeling?
Yeah, not bad actually. It's okay. It's quite a nice day today. Somebody's cutting the grass outside, so yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
Are you looking forward to the Jubilee weekend?
Yeah, we've got a couple of things planned. So I'm off to a street party that's just down the road on the village green. What else am I doing? Yeah, there's obviously a lot of things going on, sort of pub-wise and everything else. So yeah, it should be all right. Yeah, and I get 5 days off work as well, which is nice. So it works out pretty well.
That's the major benefit we've got to take away from it. It's a nice bank.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, Slam Dunk.
God bless her.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, God bless Her Majesty for our days off. Fantastic.
Fantastic. I was going to say, Slam Dunk have had a lot of bands pull out. They should get on the phone and call up Percy and get you down there for Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, what's been kind of keeping you busy throughout 2022 so far? Has all the focus been on preparing for the release of the new album?
Well, it's been a bit odd, really. So just to give you a bit of background to this album, so it's really our lockdown album. I think a lot of bands have had these, and so our last album, Seaside Donkeys, was due to come out April 2020, and we've had a lot of bad luck that's bedeviled us down the years. So that obviously didn't happen. So 2022 was a complete write-off in the end, and we finally released this album on Spotify, I think, in the autumn, because it was originally just a vinyl-only release. So we brought it out on Spotify in the autumn, and it just sort of really sank without trace. It didn't really do very much because we couldn't promote it, obviously. Then we started writing stuff for this album, Monorail, in the spring of last year. And we got a fair few tracks up to speed, did some gigs in the summer of last year. And then my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer in the autumn, so I put everything on hold for that. And I effectively withdrew from everything musical until about April of this year. And I was persuaded to get back into it by the rest of the band. So yeah, March, April, we finished off the album with some overdubs and everything else, and now we've got a lot of gigs booked to promote it. So yeah, it's had a checkered history, this album, to be honest. So I mean, we just did our first gig for about 7 months last week. So we've not really been doing much at all, but there's now going to be a flurry of activity coming up. So.
Yeah, I saw your upcoming dates and all that. It's an incredible torrid time for you guys on a personal level, as much, the stuff that's gone on the last years overall. It almost feels inevitable that the influence of the past years would have such an effect on this album, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, it's a lot of the songs in there are to do with sort of lockdown experience. But I've tried not to. It's difficult because I just wanted to get them out of the way, really, because they've been sort of building up, and now that we're no longer in that situation, thankfully, it is more of a sort of retrospective sort of look back rather than anything else. And I mean, I've already started writing material for the next release, which is definitely sort of looking forward, and it's a lot more sort of a lot less sort of introspective, if you like. So this album, I hope, puts a sort of a full stop under everything that's gone on. So
yeah, the kind of lockdown albums, if you want to call them that, or the albums that are part and parcel of this period of time, seem like they're going to be a moment in time, capturing a specific point in a band's history.
Absolutely, yeah.
You kind of look at it that way for Percy as well, then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, everything from the title to the backdrop of the cover, from the content, the lyrical content, and that's all sort of it reflects. I mean, some of them weren't even written by me at all. Well, there's 2 tracks in particular where I'm not involved because of my absence from the band, if you like, and they were put in there to just try and get the album over the line, if you like. So that's a couple of instrumental tracks that are on there. But yeah, everything to do with this album really is concerned with one way or another with the lockdown experience. So yeah, it's just good to get it out there and get it done and say, right, let's move on from that, you know. So.
Yeah, you're an artist. I don't think I speak to any artist on any kind of specific interview, be it an album, press release, tour, or live reviews and stuff like that isn't already thinking of the future and what comes next. It's all to a certain degree. Was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Considering,
sorry,
so okay. Considering all the subject matters that you're dealing with in this album, was it an easy thing to focus on those specific subjects of the past few years, especially when almost every day there was something else to distract effectively?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we gigged it last week, and even in rehearsal as well, you do have to put yourself in a sort of in a particular mindset, and I do find that quite easy actually, to just sort of like project myself back a few months, or you know, at some point in the last 2 years, and take myself back to where I was mentally at that particular point in time, and sort of and just get into it that way. So yeah, it's not been too bad, but as with the next few gigs that we've got planned, I am planning to sort of introduce some new material. I mean, it's a bit hard because we've got a habit of doing this, to be honest. We when we promote an album, ostensibly it's to promote an actual album that's being released. So you'd think you'd concentrate on the material for that particular release, but we've had a habit of being ahead of ourselves in terms of new material. So I'm always keen to like not have two gigs the same. So for instance, we've got a couple of gigs coming up this month, and I've already got in mind at least one or two tracks that I want to get in there that's out of the new batch. So, but you just try not to take away too much attention from the fact that there's something there to promote, you know. So.
Yeah. I mean, I completely understand. It's a question that I actively try to avoid, the question of what comes next, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what's currently happening.
Yeah.
I have to ask then, considering you're talking about shows as well, of course, 23rd of June is a launch show at the Fulford Arms in York. Do you kind of have a plan for how that show is going to go? Are you thinking of playing the album in full or focusing on that one predominantly more than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, that's the latter. I think it's not something that we've done before in terms of like sort of we'll just play the entire album like The Who doing Tommy or something like that. You know, we just basically rearrange the tracks that fits it. And plus we also do some old stuff as well from prior releases and fit them in there. So it's just a case of sort of right, what we're going to do, let's dredge up that release from 4 or 5 years ago, stick that in. We did that at the last gig actually, and then you've just got to decide sort of how that fits in with the overall set. So I'd imagine we'd do maybe 5 or 6 tracks from the one that we're actually promoting, and then maybe another sort of 4 or 5 random selections alongside a couple of new ones. So yeah, that's the way we normally do it. Yeah.
I think it's important as well. I haven't heard the album myself. It's important that while obviously this is a specific point in time for Percy, it's not like it's a complete about change musically or it's wildly different to what you're used to. These new songs fit alongside your body of work, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think the Chunks track is quite a bit of a departure. That's the newest song that's on that album. Actually, that's the last one that was written. And it is perhaps a bit more sort of bit different in terms of sort of structure and vocal style as well. I'm conscious that I need to get away from this comparison to Marquis Smith all the time. So I'm trying to just sort of experiment, because I can actually sing a melody, believe it or not, when I want to. So it's just trying to mix it up a little bit, but that was completely cacophonous, which I like actually. So yeah, even more so than usual. But that's not to say that's where we're heading in terms of direction. It's just I did enjoy writing that one, and it's good to perform as well. So
I think it's quite fascinating because when people will hear this album, as they often do with things released in 2022, I think this is a good reflection of where Percy is at this stage. But that's not necessarily the case here. It's more of a reflection of the last few years. And then we're going to see what comes next more than anything else, I guess. It feels very much like there's a sense of excitement and imagination still going forth with this band.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to think of it as a bit of a transition album, to be honest. I think because it draws a full stop underneath, recent events and everything, and there's a real sort of and also, like you say, that there is a sort of a sense of sort of looking forward in places as well. So yeah, I think it is a transition for us. And some of the new material that's coming out, I'm actually quite excited about. So yeah, we'll wait and see how that turns out. I mean, it's always a bit. It's the way that we work is that I'll have an idea.
Yeah.
I'll have a lyrical idea and some musical ideas. I'll take them along to the band and we'll just work them up. And a lot of the time, they turn out completely differently from how I imagined it in the first place. Or sometimes. And I take it to rehearsal. They're a lot more worked out, so there's not actually that much to do in terms of arrangement. But yeah, it's fascinating to see how ideas develop in the confines of the rehearsal room. Actually, it's great, and that's what I've really enjoyed getting back to. I've really missed that. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I imagine the difficulties distilling some of the ideas and themes and subject matters you touch upon in this new album. They seem so broad and so almost hard to capture on a personal level that you find you had a lot of trouble at first distilling those ideas into workable songs.
Yeah, definitely, and it's getting into sort of into a framework where it works within a song as well. So you can have a really big idea or a really big concept. So you're right. How am I going to sort of fit this within a sort of 3-minute track? And it's just sort of trying to just get the essence of what you're trying to say, really, and that can be quite difficult. And also you can't just go on a sort of an incoherent sort of ramble for 3 minutes. It needs to have some sort of rhyming scheme, if you like. I hate using that term, but yeah, it's got to have a sort of a tangible structure, and it's just getting the balance right, really. So yeah, it can be quite hard. But I mean, there's been people before me that have tackled really big subjects like God or death or whatever, and try to sort of capture it, and they've done it a lot more successfully than I might have done. So yeah, it's a question of just working at it.
Yeah, and of course the end result's going to speak for itself. It's not too far now, the 25th of June via 10-Foot Records. One of the things, going back to kind of like, I guess, the COVID period, the last couple of years, I'm intrigued to kind of get your thoughts on, which is what you kind of saw other bands do. And obviously when the music industry ground to a halt, everybody was a bit like, shit, what do we do now? And then slowly but surely sort of everyone jumped online and started to try and promote themselves. And then we saw the rise of live streams and stuff like that. What did you make all of that? And was there anything you ever kind of considered doing in Percy?
No, it wasn't really. And I'm not we've never been ones to sort of self-promote ourselves that way, especially on YouTube, because I'm not exactly photogenic. So that's one thing that sort of puts me off, and also I don't know if it's a bit self-indulgent, really. And we certainly weren't under any pressure from the record label to do that, so that was fine. And I was just keen to just get my head down and just sort of ride through it. And I did sort of build up material through 2020, like I said, which we then started rehearsing in spring 2021. So, but without that impetus of the rehearsal process, like I just mentioned, it is quite hard to sort of get anything really up to speed. But I mean, once we did start rehearsing again in 2021, things fell into place quite quickly. So, but yeah, so self-promotion via YouTube was never an option for us. Definitely not.
What about the social media side of things? Such an important tool for bands these days. You almost need to measure your popularity and likes and follows as much as you do with a useful tool if used right for you, or just something that you try to avoid?
No, I wouldn't say we try to avoid it. I mean, I think SoundCloud's always been useful, and I mean we have got Facebook pages that we regularly update, and that's always good for feedback. So yes, social media's definitely got its place for us. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of reviews themselves are online as well. So if we see a review, we'll post it to the site and get it circulated as much as we can. So yeah, it's definitely important. I just think the sort of live aspect or real time, if you like, promotional stuff, that's not something I'm comfortable with anyway. I don't know about the others, but I'm just I'm just a bit sort of too shy, I suppose. Believe it or not. So yeah.
Thing is, you're not alone. That's a question we pose to almost every band, every age, every long career, to sort of get their bearing on it, particularly if you're speaking to someone who's maybe in their early 20s and has grown up in the social media world. And be honest, man, we very rarely get positive responses. Most are like, it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm absolutely fine doing interviews like this, because it's a conversation with somebody else. It's not me just sort of sat in front of a camera and plugging myself away. Really, it's you know, there's a discourse going on here rather than me just sort of saying, "Oh, look at me, aren't we great?" And you know, please like us. You know, I've never been up for that. So yeah, so there's. But I mean, but like you say, I mean, when you've got stuff like TikTok and Instagram and all that, you know, that is for a certain generation to embrace, and they're absolutely comfortable with that. But yeah, I'm not. I'm just too self-conscious.
No, it's completely fine. I've kind of gotten used to doing these Zoom interviews over the last few years. Aside from Bloodstock, I had my first in-person interview at a show last week, and it was a nerve-wracking experience going back to that style compared to just.
I bet. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I bet. And yeah, I mean, just gigging again in front of people. That was just amazing, really. When we did our first gig back last year, it was just incredible just to have that. Even though we hadn't really gigged for, I mean, it was a year, but it just felt like it'd been forever. And just getting into a room and hearing the noise and the volume was the fact. God, have we always played this loud? Like, you know, and yes. And just to get the reaction from the crowd, it's just, you really feed off it. So yeah, just having that sort of personal contact is something else. So yeah, definitely.
What did you make of that little period we had over here in this country, briefly, where we flirted with the ideas of sit-down shows and socially distant shows?
Oh, yeah, that was just never going to take off. Not with us. I mean, we did have a couple of gigs booked on that basis. I think one of the venues actually had to shut anyway because they were deemed that the measures that they had in place weren't sufficient. So they actually closed that venue down. Which was a shame.
Yeah.
But no, there's just no way I could have envisaged that happening at all, or because I don't know, you might as well be just sat in your living room listening to it on speakers, really, rather than, because it's just all about getting up and close, and because from what I heard, there was going to be barriers up, and like you say, sort of people not allowed to stand next to each other. You couldn't go to the bar. It was all one-way systems and all that. It just would have been really sterile, and it just would have felt, just not right at all. So.
I did one. I went to one show that was the exact thing, and it was a black metal band, and it was the most surreal, uncomfortable, unforgettable experience of my gig life.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, the whole thing, when you sort of look back, and it's easy to, you sort of forget and you think, Christ, did we actually do that? You know, sort of having to sort of shuffle around Tesco's sort of in an orderly sort of queue up and down the aisles in a prescribed direction, and it was absolutely horrendous. So yeah, it's just great to get gigs back up and running properly again.
Yeah, and your tour calendar's looking a little fuller. It's quite an intriguing number of events you got coming up as well. It's quite an exciting time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's some places we haven't played before, like in Stockport, for instance. I've never played there. We did have an invite to play at a bar called Percy's, funnily enough. That's down in Shropshire, which is quite a trek for us. So we're hoping to get that involved next year. As part of a sort of an actual mini tour, sort of via Manchester or somewhere like that. So we'll see how that goes. But we've got a fair few lined up. One in Gateshead, I think, in July. So I'm originally from Sunderland, so I'm hoping to get a few family members along there who haven't seen us for donkey's years. So that'll be good. That'll be really good.
I wish you all the success on that as well with the release of the upcoming album as well. Last question for you, Colin, and it's really this. Percy has been around since 1996, basically, in some form. You've seen a lot of changes in the music industry, an incredible amount of changes, yet you are still standing in 2022. What do you put that down to? Persistence
from my friend and bass player Andy, to be honest, because I think without him I would have given up years ago. But he's always had faith in our abilities to carry on, and I think as well we tend to be our style of music. It tends to hit the zeitgeist every sort of few years. So like being around for as long as we have. Fashion sort of tends to it's like the clock's sort of right every twice a day. We tend to sort of be relevant every few years, which is always nice. And I think we're at that stage now. We're sort of a bit like bands like Idols and that sort of stuff that are quite sort of they sound a bit like us. And so that's what keeps us going, really. But we've never. I think what ultimately we've never tried to chase fashion or chase contemporary styles at all. We've just kept going, and that's just the way we are. A bit like Half Man Half Biscuit, I suppose, who we've been compared with before. But we've never tried to compromise what we are and who we are as well. And we get on. The four of us just get on really well. We're all mates. We're all about the same age. I mean, we have tried, myself and Andy, with other band members that are quite a bit younger than us, and it's never really worked because of the age gap and because they've tried to drag the band in a different direction. Yeah. And it, as soon as that happens, it's like, it's just not happening. But the mix that we've got at the minute is really good, actually. So we're on our third album now. Yeah. Hopefully there'll be quite a few more. So long may it continue. Definitely. Long may it continue. Wonderful last words to end us on. Colin, thank you so much for taking the time. No problem, Carl. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?